el desarrollo de esta actividad. Mencionarles que nuestro evento se transmite en 3 idiomas vía streaming.
I would like to mention that our event is being transmitted in 3 languages via streaming, and we have a panel here. We can share our reactions via social media with the hashtag Foro Económico CAF. You can follow us on X, Instagram, and Facebook. And this way we will be able to continue the dialogue beyond the walls of this room. And I would like to remind you that this is a quiet room and you can activate audio from the QR code that will be shown on the screen. That following the QR code will give you access to this room. You can use the QR code shown on the screen, and that way you will be able to listen to all the presentations. So please remember to use the QR code on the screen. And I'd like to mention that this is an event that is available thanks to the support of media partners: Prisa, La Prensa, La Estrella de Panamá, Mercado, El Tiempo, El Universo. El Universo. Checking microphone. And of course, I'd like to mention that through ABC Radio Panamá, The Guardian, RCN, and El Deber, El Diario from El Salvador, and Eco TV. And we are here thanks to the support of our media partners: Prisa, La Prensa de Panamá, La Estrella de Panamá, El Comercio, El Universo, RCN, Eco TV, and in El Salvador, through Globo and Eco TV. So we will begin our second forum, which deals on the topic from energy to innovation, and a LAC Middle East agenda for the next decade. And I would like to introduce Javier de la Fuente, our moderator. He is a deputy director for El País newspaper, and he will moderate this interesting conversation. I would also like to invite our speakers. First, I would like to call to the podium the advisor to the Prime Minister and official spokesperson for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Qatar, Maher Al-Ansari. He is the advisor to the Prime Minister and the official spokesperson for the Foreign Affairs Ministry of Qatar. We also have the General Director and President of the OPEC Fund for International Development, Abdulhamid Al Khalifa. And we would like to invite him to the podium. We also have the General Director and Chief for the Americas of the Saudi Arabia Investments Ministry, Abdul Rahman Bakir. But before we begin, Ignacio Correa Soli, who is the manager for the deployment of resources and global alliances of CAF, will give us a brief welcome and introduction. We would also like to welcome Carlos Arturo Hoyos, our Deputy Foreign Affairs Minister of Panama. We'd like to welcome him here as he accompanies us in this exchange of experiences. And I would like to ask Ignacio Cornasoli, who is the manager for the deployment of resources and global alliances of CAF, to welcome us to this topic. Good afternoon to everyone. Thank you very much for accompanying us to this panel.
First of all, I want to ask the Vice Minister of Panama to give some words about welcome this panel, please, Vice Minister.
Thank you, Ignacio. I want to thank the spokesperson of the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Qatar, also Mr. Abdul Rahman, Director General for Latin America from Saudi Arabia, from coming Secretary General of OPEC, for us that you have accepted our invitation to be in Panama in the Latin American Economic Forum is a real show of how you see the region. It's a show of commitment and friendship, which we value deeply. I can say that I was in Doha for the Doha Forum, and I was treated fantastically, and it was very inspirational to see what was going on in the Doha Forum. So I hope that you have seen that this forum can fill its shoes as a Latin American counterpart very well. So thank you for being here, and thank you for accepting our invitation. This shows the mutual friendship that we have and that we are looking to the future together. And of course, with Saudi, we have just opened an embassy in Riyadh, which shows our focus in the region. We want to create partnerships that produce value for Panama and for the region. We obviously put our platform to your services, and we want you to see Latin America from Panama. So, and thank you, of course, to OPEC for being here. You're a very valued partner. Thank you for that. And especially, of course, to CAF. You have been an amazing partner in creating this. So, we are eager to continue working together to expanding our relationships, which we see as having long-term value. Latin America is a massive market that is yet undeveloped in terms of its potential. And with your help, I'm sure that we can accelerate it. And I hope that you like what you see and that you invest. So thank you guys for being here. And thank you, Ignacio, for this kind space. Thank you, Paulo, for making it happen.
Thank you very much. For me, it's a pleasure, it's an honor as a journalist to be part of this panel with such important people. Uh, in a global economy undergoing transition, Latin America and the Caribbean and the Middle East have the opportunity to build a more strategic, diverse, and long-term relationship. This session, want to explore how to move forward from sporadic exchanges to next generation alliance that connect investment, trade, technology, and cooperation, mobilizing financing for transformative projects, change and connectivity, and promoting collaboration in applied innovation. We are talking about energy, digital, food, water. The goal is in the next 50 minutes to identify shared priorities, enabling conditions, and collaboration mechanisms that can support a more predictable, scalable, and results-oriented agenda for the next 10 years or more. I'm going to start with you, Dr. Majed Al-Ansari. What common interests can shape Latin America and the Caribbean with the Middle East agenda beyond specific sectors? I also know, and I would like you to talk more about the role that Qatar is playing in this region as an important actor in other that is not a financial sector like the negotiations and the.
Thank you very much, Javier. And let me begin by extending a great gratitude to our friends at CAF and our hosts in Panama. This has been exceptional in many ways. First of all, it is a testimony to the sincerity and the genuine need and want in this region to reach out to the Middle East and to work with us very closely on all the issues that we are working on right now in the region, but also on the investment and business opportunities that have been growing here in this region and in our region. And Your Excellency, you talked about the Doha Forum and what we have been doing in that front. Well, we have superseded in a lot of ways by what we have seen here in CAF and the level of not only organization but also the content and the substance of the meetings. I've been telling my colleagues here that I have done probably more bilaterals and walk by bilaterals than any other conference I've been to in recent years. And I have to say that for our countries in both regions right now, we are facing, obviously, like any other country in the world, we're facing the similar challenges. The whole face of the world is changing. It is changing in a way that is affecting everyday life. It is affecting our economies. It's affecting our view of how to bilaterally work, trilaterally, multilaterally work on a lot of the issues around the world today. One of the main issues that brings the countries of both regions together is a commitment to multilateralism, a commitment to international law. The threats to international law, the threats to the multilateral framework today are more realistic than they have ever been since World War II. The whole notion of what globalization means, what living in a globalized world means, has been put into question by recent development. And therefore, for small and medium powers around the world, those who are not directly involved in the great power rivalries in today's world, it's very important for us to work together to help protect the notion of multilateralism, help protect the notion of international law and the practice of international law to withstand all the challenges that we are facing right now. We have seen what it means to lose international law as a guiding beacon for international politics. We are seeing it as we speak right now. The level of death and destruction, the scores of refugees and displaced people, the unbelievable human suffering in all of these conflicts happening all around the world are part of this lack of belief, lack of trust in institutions, in international law, and international organizations. And that is something that we need to work together to make sure that we protect. And I think our countries have done a lot towards multilateralism, towards respecting international law, and we continue to do that. But also on the economic front, I think the strategic diversification and economic resilience of our countries in working on issues like connectivity, for example. If you look at the notion of connectivity, a country like Qatar is working to become a connectivity hub around the world for data, people, ideas, and goods. This is why we have one of the largest airports in the world, our global airline, Qatar Airways, but also Hamad Port, which is one of the biggest in the region, the free zones that connect both seaport and airport, the free zones of technology, the Qatar Financial Center. It's an ecosystem that is built around being able to be a connectivity hub for the four items I spoke about earlier. And if we look at Panama as an example here in Latin America, it is also a hub for connectivity, not only in this region, but around the world. More than 8,000 ships around the world carry the Panama flag because of that ability of this small country just like mine to be a connectivity hub around the world and to connect the world in this way. And there are a lot of synergies that we can do, work on together on that front to keep the world connected at a time when there are those who want the world to be fragmented, who want the world to be disassociated with its principles that the international community was based upon. And then development is a very important factor for all of us. We've been working in Qatar with this region and with organizations like the IDP and CAF and others in this region to see how we can help with development in two parallel tracks. One is through direct investment, our investment in the energy sector in this region especially, but also in real estate and logistics has been based on helping the economies of this region with cash flow, helping the economies of this region with the projects that are needed that would help stabilize and develop economies in a way that is not seen before in some of these countries like Guyana, Suriname, what we are doing in Brazil, what we are doing with Venezuela, with Colombia. All of these projects have always been based on how we can develop these economies in a south-to-south relations. And finally, and for us in Qatar, this is very important because when our Emir, His Highness, was asked, how do you describe Qatar? He said, energy provider and peace facilitator. And while we invest heavily in energy and exploration and renewable energies and production here in Latin America, we are also investing in peace. And this is why my country welcomed the opportunity to be mediator in settings like Colombia and Venezuela in a way that for us was getting out of our comfort zone geographically. but also allowed us to engage, to understand, to live the context of a region that we are not part of, but we are committed to. And we are continuing to do that with the OAS and other organizations in the region to see how we can help stabilize, how we can help protect peace and develop peaceful outcomes. And we're also working on education, as Education Above All program in Qatar is working now with organizations here in Latin America to support bringing back children who did not have a chance to get into education back into education, as we believe that this is the bedrock of any development. A lot of synergies, a lot of untapped potential when it comes to the partnership between the GCC and Latin America. And I think this is the time now to put that card on the table and to work on these possible synergies in the future.
Thank you, Dr. Al-Ansari. Mr. Al-Khalifa, you're the Director General and President of the OPEC Fund for International Development. I want to ask you about, from your perspective, what is the single most important condition needed today to move Latin America and the Middle East relations from episodic cooperation to a truly strategic partnership?
Well, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you. Let me start by thanking CAF for this invitation. And we have a great relationship with CAF. And we are having an alliance in this part of the world. As you know, OPEC Fund is a global institution that was established 50 years ago, and we have now a portfolio in 125 countries around the world. Maybe 26 countries of them are in Latin America and the Caribbean, and we are proud to be partner in this part of the world. But also, I would like to thank Panama for the great invitation and for the hospitality. We have this is my first visit to your country, but I found it a very great country, and it is one of the countries that also benefit from OPEC Fund. We have a great relationship with the country here, and we have provided a good support to Panama. Back to your question, and let me maybe start from something that Majid said, which is South-South. This is a clear way to describe the South-South cooperation. As you know, one of the most important shifts that is going on in the world now, the South is getting more power and more collaboration between each other. I'm talking about development side. It is not political issues, but from development and finance. There is a lot of complementarity between the two regions. And I think if we just focus on two issues, investment and trade, we have a great amount of complementarity between the two regions. As you know, Latin America is a region abundant with agriculture, water, and in the Middle East, we are looking for that. And I remember one of the leading companies, private companies in Saudi Arabia, is investing. It's agriculture companies, dairy companies, and they are investing in Argentina to get their raw materials for the animals. So it is a great complementarity. But when we talk from the other side also, the GCC, especially Middle East and GCC in specific, they are very way ahead on the innovation side and the technology side, on the financial structure side. and these are very important for Latin America here. And one of the projects that we did in, for example, in Paraguay, is to channel under our B-loan umbrella, because we are an international institution, and under our B-loan, some commercial banks fund to Latin America, specifically in Paraguay. So that is the real development, and that is how the multilateral institutions can come into the play of that. Back to your question, I think the most important condition here to have a good exchange in resources, investment, and trade is, I think, the predictability and planning. I think we should move from an ad hoc kind of actions to a very well-planned actions that can sustain this kind of relationship for a long time. And as you know, when we are talking about investment, investment needs a predictability and needs also stability, and need a good governance at the same time. And I think we have to move towards those issues, and to make sure that we are, when we do these kind of actions, we do it in a very planned and efficient and sustainable way. I think we can also apply innovation here. I'm not talking about only technology, but innovation in any way that we are doing our business, even in the process, and how do we do our daily business. So these are the conditions that I think they are very important for a future and sustainable collaboration and innovative way of doing business between the two regions.
Thank you, Mr. Khalifa. Our third panelist, Abdul Rahman Bakir, is the Managing Director and Head of America's Ministry of Investment of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. I want to ask you, I know that you have opened a new office in Miami recently. I hope that you can tell us more about that. But what is needed to turn opportunities into concrete projects? With kind of governance, trust, rules, financing, capabilities. What do you think?
Thank you, Javier. And just let me first start by thanking CAF for the great organization here. Second year in a row, and you've done it even way better. Impressive lineup. And thank you to Vice Minister Carlos for hosting us here in the Republic of Panama, a place where I call the capital of Central America. It's a place that's bringing everyone together in the region, in the Americas. And here, our intention to choose Miami was not by coincidence. It was an operational decision to foster the relation with Latin America and through the Americas itself. So when you look at LATAM, we're talking about around 1,400 multinational companies. They manage their operation from Miami. Also, you have, if you take up the Fortune 500 companies, you have at least 20 of them are currently headquartered in Miami. But also the American capital that's coming from the West Coast, from New York, from Chicago, post-COVID-19, when you see it in Miami, probably in the headlines you see it in Florida. But it's not only because of Florida, that's really because of Miami. So we wanted to be ahead in the curve, establish our presence in Miami, to be closer to a region that you're talking about a scale of 6 to 7 trillion of GDP. You're talking about a population of more than 660 million people. So that's just alone more than the EU population. We wouldn't be doing that advancement with LATAM from far away. So when I was in my post in Washington, D.C., and for example, if I want to go to Buenos Aires, it actually takes me longer than going back to Riyadh. So being in Miami, you could at least go to, you would have twice daily flight into major cities from Buenos Aires up to Sao Paulo, to Bogota, and so over. So that decision was backed by the proximity that we want to build with a region that's offering beyond food security and beyond commodity trade that Saudi has enjoyed for the last 50 years. And what I mean by that is the relation with LATAM for the last 50 years was purely built on trade of agri, obviously because of the food security element. But as Vice Minister Carlos also mentioned yesterday, now we start to see things not only from a lens, but also we need a magnifier to see what could we do more within the region. And that came in the last period through private capital. So if you see the last 5 years, if I take just Brazil as an example, the last 5 years, the bilateral investment between Saudi and Brazil was 7 times more in the last 50 years. And that wouldn't happen without a flow of private capital. And what I mean by private capital is we have, for example, the largest investment bank now, BTG Pactual. They announced their regional headquarters in the Middle East to be established in Riyadh. And that really allowed to have more private companies coming into Saudi, not only from the food sector, as I mentioned earlier, but through tapping into different sectors. One good example is Oncoclinica, a leading cancer treatment facility in Latin America. They just opened their large facility in Saudi with a local operator, a JV with Al Faisaliya Group. So that allows us to really look into LATAM through a different lens, not only through the food and the agri, but we are now looking into biotech, healthcare, even tourism, real estate, energy, and so on. Also, as Dr. Ansari mentioned, one of our national champion in Al Marai, that's the one you mentioned that in Argentina. And we really look at our national champions such as Al Marai, but also Aramco is another good example. Aramco just completed their largest acquisition in Chile of Ismax, making it their first acquisition of a downstream facility in Chile, which allows Saudi to be closer into LATAM in the energy market as well through Chile. So all of on that, I hope that's enough justification why we opened an office in Miami. But my message here from the Saudi government is we are closer to you here in Miami because we want to invest in the economies of Latin America. And Panama is also a region where we look into. So Miami, we know, is still technically not in Central America. There is a good joke that to say the best thing about Miami that it's very close to the U.S. So that's maybe one of the things that we need to bear into consideration. But I hope that in the future, in version 2 and 3 of CAF, maybe we could have also an offices here, and also not beyond Miami, not only in the region of Americas.
Thank you so much. I just realized that I'm the only one in this panel that didn't thank CAF to organize this and to be here. I want to ask Ignacio Nacho about how CAF perceives the relationship between Latin America and the Middle East, but not only Latin America. We can talk also about more about Spain. How do you perceive this relationship?
Thank you so much, Javier. So I want to start by thanking El País and Grupo Prisa because we have a strategic alliance with them, being one of our main partners. We have something called América Futura, which I encourage you to read, Notice of Development in the region. I want to praise my partners here. I want to specifically start with Panama, because I appreciate you thanks us, but the strategic partner in order for all this to take place has been Panama and its authorities, President Mulino, the Minister of Finance and Minister of Foreign Affairs have been really the pushing force around us. So thank you so much for this, Minister. I need to make a special statement here. I have here in the room the former President, Enrique Garcia. He's the one who really started this relationship with the Gulf countries, President. So what we're doing here is picking up from what he built. I also have my father here, so it's like passing an exam for me. But thank you so much. I just want to give some context here. And you have a note that we recently published and released along with OPEC back in Seville a few months ago. On the President Diaz-Granados foresees there's a huge potential opportunities on what we call third nation, which is a concept by Professor Kwa from Singapore, from Lee Kuan Yew School. And that was we were referring to South-South. So at CAF, we want to go beyond existing trade. That's an investment that's going already among the two regions. We do believe, however, that despite these and the many forms that we will be doing in Riyadh, hopefully Dubai, where I'll be next week, in Doha, where I'll be next week as well. But we need to do more. We need to start connecting those two regions. I'd like a lot the connecting you mentioned. So we at CAF, we publish this. We have, for example, just to give you an example, we used to go, and I want to praise here Angel Melguizo, who published this report. Angel, 15 billion in trade, more or less, that we export to the Gulf countries. At the same time, it's what you call, Angel, I believe it's a symbiotic relationship. Because Brazil, for example, imports, while we export 15 billion in agriculture, we import 1 billion in fertilizers. It's an interesting relationship, a round relationship that we need to increase more. But we need to go beyond that. Then we move on to food security, just like you just mentioned. We also are doing now investments, for example, on 10 billion investment in the regions. Some of them are going to renewable, interesting ones. And they're not all going to Brazil, because sometimes we all think that Brazil and Mexico, they're also investing. There's one country here that we're missing, strategic partner, and for Her Excellency, she couldn't join us today, and we wish her well. It's the Emirates. The Emirates have been very active as well in the region. And they invest in other countries, for example, Ecuador and Peru. I was very much surprised. And in logistics, for example, the ports industry in the region have had major investments from the Gulf countries. That's something we want to go on. You mentioned tourism. We'll be at the World Government Summit next week in Dubai, precisely presenting a fund for tourism that CAF is developing. And we're looking for investment from the region, from the Gulf countries, into Latin America, where we can see. And we want to go beyond that as well. We want to see what's coming ahead. What's coming ahead for us, it's, say, data centers, and that we need energy. And what can Latin America provide is a lot of green energy. We have a green matrix, as we all know it, and that's where we want to partner with you. And that's where CAF comes. So, I'm sorry, you mentioned data, no? So, in order to do so, that's the winning parts. Why CAF? CAF is precisely a platform who has a knowledge of the countries, has a presence in the countries, who had an ongoing relationship with every government in the countries. And at CAF, we can go beyond the ideas that you mentioned before into projects. And that's where we partner. And I want here specifically make a specific reference to OPEC. OPEC has been a very long strategic alliance for us. And with OPEC, President just signed a 1 billion back in 24 line of credit with CAF. That's the second one we've signed. For the last 15 years, we had 3.5 billion, mostly of co-financing opportunities in the region. OPEC, I would say, and I'm in charge of the mobilization department, is one of the most reliable partners we have at CAF. So thank you so much. And I want to congratulate you on your 50 years of this week. Mabruk for you. OPEC is going to be hosting a major conference on, I believe it's end of June in Vienna, as you always do, in much more glamorous than this conference center. But and the importance here is that we need to have a stronger presence of Latin American and Caribbean, not only on the authorities, but also on the private sector. We have at CAF, we've also signed agreements, for example, the Kuwaiti Fund for Development, with Abu Dhabi Development Fund, with the Saudi Fund more recently. And, Minister, I'm very pleased to let you know, to inform you that since yesterday, I'll be closing negotiations on Friday next week with the Qatari Fund, and hopefully education above all as well. So we have new, reliable partners in the Gulf that we want to invest more in the region. But that starts precisely with, I think it's a relationship of trust. That's what CAF provides you. It's a trustworthy partner in this region with knowledge on the countries, but also is going to provide projects. You just mentioned Spain, and I want to close in this. My office is located in Spain, so not only we have a very strong relationship among Spain and the Middle East, but the president of OPEC back in July, was also co-presiding with President Diaz-Granados a meeting with the Arab Coordination Group, which is all these development funds that I mentioned. And we have some homework, Luciela and myself and Rafa, that we need to, in order for this June meeting, bring some project identified, public side, private sector side, and a methodology in order to bring. So we're eager to work more with our partners, and we believe for Spanish companies, for example, as you mentioned, there's a big opportunity for investment for them to co-finance it, but as well on the bidding process. Thank you.
Thank you, Ignacio. Journalists like to, we work with the present, but we like to ask about future. Thinking in 10 years, which opportunity today could become the cornerstone of the relationship between both regions? I would like you to all ask the same question.
Well, I mean, the world is changing as we speak in a way that is unprecedented. And it's very difficult to make any projections, as we are seeing a lot of the staples of international economy, international politics being unraveled by current events. But there are, possible synergies that have been brewing for many years now between the two regions that are now ready to or have reached fruition in a way that would make our societies work together. One of them, of course, has to do with AI and the next generation technology investments. Our region has been investing heavily around the world in these new technologies, in these emerging markets, and you can see a lot of these companies now based in our regions, in Riyadh, in the UAE, in Qatar, and at the same time, we are also finding solutions, as Ignacio said, for energy output, for data centers, for connectivity, and so on, in a way that would translate the ambitions of our leadership when it comes to AI and technology and being part of this new boom. And at the same time, allows us to build these partnerships around the world that would make us realize the potential of these technologies. Another one has to do with development. Development for a really long time has been a monopolized business. There are certain great powers that have monopolized that world in a way that makes all of us play second fiddle when it comes to international development. The organizations that have been working on development in the past have always been under the patronage of the traditional post-World War II powers. But today, you have institutions, like CAF, like OPEC Fund, like all these internationally diverse and more democratized versions of international developments that are coming into the mix in a different way. And the traditional donors of the world on the other side of development have changed. Today, the traditional donors are no longer the traditional donors. What we used to refer to as the non-traditional or the new donors of international development are now the major players in the market. Are now the countries, if they are state players, or the regional organizations or development organizations that are doing a lot of the work. Look at the BRICS Bank, for example. Look at the organizations that are presented here on the stage. And therefore, we need to work together on building frameworks and regulation around development that would help us protect our investment into these fields and see the right, spend every cent in the right place in order to help, in development in general. And finally, and I would say this, I'm probably the only one here representing, along with His Excellency, my Panaman counterpart, on the political side of things. The monopoly that has been broken in development, the monopoly that has been broken in international economy, there's also a monopoly in international peace that has been broken by non-traditional mediators, non-traditional conflict resolution methods. And this is something that we're working on very closely. When a country like Qatar, thousands of miles away, operates here in Latin America, working with governments, working with local communities towards peace facilitation, when the issues like Gaza in our region become political issues here in this region, with governments issuing statement after statement and working very closely with our governments on it, it means that we are today at a world where international peace is a process that needs all of us working together across our region and not to be prisoners of our regional dynamics. This is something that I think we can work on very closely together, and we have begun working on it. But there is a lot to be done when it comes to narrative, when it comes to talking to each other, understanding each other, and recognizing that every conflict that happens in the world today is a local conflict for each and every one of us. That kind of partnership is what makes a better world for our children and their children. And it is something that I think a lot of leaders in both regions believe in. And we are seeing that happening, but we need to do much more in it.
Thank you so much, Mr. Khalifa.
Well, prediction is very difficult, but especially in the long term. But I think as working in the development business and working with partners here in Latin America for a long time, I think this is part of the South-South. And as I said at the beginning of my first intervention, the world is changing. And now maybe Ignacio mentioned the ACG meeting in Sevilla with Latin American countries. ACG, which is Arab Coordination Group, including 10 development institutions from the Arab world, including OPEC Fund, because we have both countries were establishing countries for our institution, is taking more role. ACG became more influential when it comes to development assistant provider. And now, as Majid mentioned, the traditional providers, assistant providers, they are not that strong. And ACG becomes now as a second development assistant provider worldwide. This just give you an indication where things are moving to. But I think that the two regions have a huge potential. It is part of the South-South cooperation, and it's part of the South-South integration. It is beyond cooperation. It should be integration. And in my view, if we want this kind of collaboration or cooperation now to move into a higher level, we have to plan our actions. We have to make sure that we have the right tools. In my view, the right tools is to have a platform, not necessarily a huge platform, a light platform that connects the two regions with an annual kind of meeting at the ministerial level, just to ensure that there is a focused, not a wide action plan, but very well focused action plan, and it is implemented right away. So in that, within that angle, I see, for example, between OPEC Fund and CAF, there is a good amount of collaboration at the country's level, but also at a continent level. And we have arranged in Spain, in Sevilla last summer, that meeting with between ACG, head of institutions, and the ministers of finance of CAF members. And we are, and I hope we will be repeating this this year in Vienna within the annual meetings of OPEC Fund. So there is a good amount of collaboration, but we have to make sure that this kind of collaboration is well planned, and we can use the multilateral institutions as a platform for that kind of collaboration.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bakir. Maybe don't do any predictions for 10 years, but what we have today or in the next couple of years, which do you think is the main opportunity for you?
So Javier, if I look into how we 10 years ago, how we looked into the Americas. And I remember when I was based in DC, we're focusing mainly on North America. We were looking at South America through one category only, the public policy. Then it reminds me of what Majid mentioned now about the development funds and how it's changing. A great example of development capital is the Saudi Fund of Development, where now most recently we had long-term financing for a low interest, mainly in south-to-south economies. So a project in Cordoba in Argentina for $100 million financing for 30 years. A project in San Lucia was just closed also last year. Another project in Costa Rica. Another project also in Guyana. That wasn't the case 10 years ago. So going forward, I think that lens of a pure public policy or a policy-making lens would shift into different categories, which I explained earlier. And my prediction that would be anchored mainly by the private sector. However, the private sector likes to tailgate somehow with the policymaker and with the public policy. So that element would need to only be pushed if you can secure a comprehensive approach. If you just look into it from one lens, policymakers, all the private sector alone, it will not work together. However, if you put those all categories together, that as I mentioned, the four ones, which is first public policy lens, second is the private capital, third the sovereign capital, and then fourth the national champions for each country. When you bring them together, I think things would definitely operate on a different level. And since you were calling on people on the stage, I have to mention that my first time here in Latin America was 10 years ago, and that's thanks to my wife. She's from Brazil, so I know that Brazilians, they see themselves a little bit different to Latin America, but she opened the door into that region. And the first time I visited Panama, I remember it was 5 a.m. when I landed. The first person I saw after going out of the plane door was Juan Mercado, here from the government of Panama. And I remember our discussion that how we need to do more between Saudi and Latin America. And fast forward, now we're 4 years later, totally different approach and totally different dynamics and engagement to what was there in 2021. So again, to the prediction and your question, I think what we're seeing today, that will be 10 times more just because of engagements like these and because of approaching it through a comprehensive lens and not only one category.
Thank you so much. Ignacio, I think I'm going to end with you and the Vice Minister of Panama. I would like you, after Ignacio, to give some words about not the future, but the present. Ignacio, what we are going to have in the next couple of years.
Thank you so much, Javier. I just want to say a few words. I forgot to mention that yesterday, actually, we signed with the Saudi fund ESCAP. And the very interesting fact here, it's an equity fund. So this is a new approach. And I just want to, what you just mentioned, of new partners. So what you have here is new potential partners for the region. So in 10 years from now, you won't see them as new. You will see them as regular partners who are very much engaged with the region. We foresee at CAF a major engagement from the Gulf partners in Latin America and the Caribbean. And I want to praise that they have, we also should have mentioned, they have a major interest in the Caribbean countries and have been supporting, as you just rightly pointed out, the Caribbean countries. One of the very few donors very much present in the Caribbean. So, and what just like you mentioned, ODA has been reviewed by some of our traditional partners. The Gulf countries, on the contrary, is reviewing to increase it. And I think that's very important. But we need to go beyond ODA. We also need to have new financial instrument in order to do blended finance with this ODA and try to bring more investment in the region from the Gulf countries. And that needs to be investment with impact. And what I mean when impact is job creation. So we foresee, Javier, a much closer relationship with the Gulf countries. I pick up, President, on what you just mentioned, and I'm sure that my colleagues from CAF, along with your fantastic team for Latin America, are going to be doing this on a regular basis. And we believe this is just a start and a very promising one. We just need to mention that OPEC, for example, has very good knowledge of the region, having Ecuador and Venezuela. And I just want to finish with this. I think the Gulf countries are going to be very active in what's going to happen in Venezuela in the coming years.
Thank you so much, Ignacio. I want to finish and please let me switch to Spanish to say to the Vice Minister, muchísimas gracias. Creo que lo que ha conseguido Panamá estos días es algo.
Thank you very much. I think that what Panama has achieved in these past few days was something unimaginable in the previous world, and it's been achieved thanks to the work of CAF and to the Foreign Affairs Ministry of Panama and its wonderful initiative. As a journalist, something that is difficult to find in such a polarized, conflictive world is to find a space for union. And I think that very few countries in the region are able to do so. But before I ask you to speak, Carlos, I wanted to make this recognition of your country.
To our friends who are visiting us, I just want to say that if I'm not too much into predictions, but I can certainly predict a wave of interest and investment from the Gulf into Panama and into the entire region. We hope that you can invest not only here but in the other countries. We would really appreciate it if the investments happen here as well. And if the investments don't happen here, at least that the investments pass through the Panama Canal, and we'll be happy with that. So thank you for that. We're looking to a closer collaboration, and I'm very happy to see all this interest in your countries and what you have to say about us, because we are certainly looking at you, and we feel that reciprocal. So thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me to this conversation.
Thank you so much. Muchas gracias.
passed a law in '64 to give those who ain't got a little more, but it only goes so far. 'Cause the law don't change another's mind when all it sees at higher in time is the line on the color bar. But who knows? That's just the way it is. Some things never change. That's just the way it is. That's just the way it is. I was born in a city where the winter nights don't ever sleep. So this life's always with me. The eyes inside my face will never bleed. Every time you try to fix me, I know you'll never find that missing piece. And when you cry and say you miss me, I'll lie and tell you that I'll never leave. I don't wanna sacrifice for your love. I'll try. I don't wanna sacrifice, but I love my time.
Creo que tantas cosas en la mano. Tantas cosas en la mano.
I was
Vale.
born
Me encargan de presentar a su doña Carolina.
where the winter nights don't ever sleep. So this life's always with me. As inside my face will never bleed. I sacrifice.
We would like to ask the attendees to please take your seats again. Please sit down again so that we can officially introduce the next group of panelists and the moderator that will lead the discussion on this very interesting panel from we had the previous panel on energy innovation from the Middle East perspective, and now we are going to move on to the Asian perspective, opportunities for a strategic agenda. And we would like to invite Jose Manuel Acevedo, who is the news director for RCN Network, to please come to the podium. Good afternoon. In the next few minutes, we will begin our panel, and the panel will be mostly in English, but we will also have the opportunity to listen to one of the panelists in Spanish. You would prefer to speak in Spanish.
To facilitate the conversation we're going to do in the next minutes. I'm going to ask some of the panelists to come to the stage. First of all, Hie Ming Zhang or Carolina Zhang, Regional Manager of Dowa Engineering. Please, Carolina, come to the stage. Also, Hiroshi Wago from the CAF. I'm going to ask as well Juan Miranda, the Senior Advisor of the MCDF, to come to the stage. I have also Ashok Kumar Bhartia. Thank you very much, and come to the stage as well. I think we're going to start. Hiroshi.
José Manuel, falta Kimura.
Yes, Professor, please. Yes, Professor Kimura Ukunari. Thank you very much. Back again, good afternoon, and it's a great pleasure for me to have this conversation with you. A conversation between Asia and Latin America, certainly. In one hand, we got Asia that is growing and growing in the last years and has become one of the main engines of global growth, investment, and innovation. And in the other hand, we have Latin America that is also growing, that is trying to diversify its economy, and that is looking for new ways to grow and create better jobs. So this panel is about how both regions can move beyond the traditional relationship based mainly on commodities and build a more modern strategic partnership focused on investment, technology, value chains, and long-term development. So today we want to talk about opportunities, but also about what needs to be in place to make them real. Hiroshi Wago from CAF, I think you could do a better introduction than me on these matters, and I want to give you the word for the first term.
Thank you, Jose Manuel, and thank you everyone to be here. It's a pleasure to be here in Panama with all this audience, and I think it's a great opportunity to talk about Asia and Latin America and the Caribbean. First of all, as you know, CAF has 24 member countries, just 2 non-regional members that are Spain and Portugal. However, we have a very strong ties with Asia. For example, with Japan, we have more than 50 years of history between JBIC and CAF. And as well, we have been issued bonds in the Japanese market as well. And as well, we have relationship with other players as JIC and as well. In the part of China, we have the presence today of Juan of MCDF. That is one of our great partners in China. And also, we are sharing MCDF right now. As well, we have other countries as India with Mr. Ashok here that has been supporting us with the India Exim Bank and supporting operation and do some co-financial structures. And as well, it's a pleasure to have Korean players. We have been working with Korean Exim Bank for the past years, and we want to involve the private sector. Though is a very great player that has been working with us in Peru especially, but in other countries of the region. And Professor Kimura has the opportunity to come here to participate in the different private roundtables and to bring more the perspective from the IDEGETRO, that is the think tank that has been supporting us. Then for CAF, in the business capacities, is a very big opportunity to continue working together with all the Asian countries. And I think it's a very good opportunity to increase the volume of businesses. And now we see an increase of trade and investment between the both regions. And I think it's the perfect opportunity to talk about this topic today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hiroshi. Let me start with Carolina Min Yang, who's going to be speaking in English in this part of the conversation in Spanish. I mean, Carolina, sería importante que nos cuentes cuál ha sido la experiencia de esta.
If you could please share with us the experience of this major global player, DOA Engineering, how the company has contributed to this vision and support here in Latin America. Welcome, Carolina. Hello? Can you hear me? Yes, we can hear you. And it is a great pleasure, and thank you for inviting us to this prestigious event. I work with DOA Engineering, we're an engineering firm. We offer services. We are consultants for all types of civil structures, and we provide services in the national market and the global market. In the global market, we offer services to more than 23 countries, and 8 of them I am in charge of them, of the Latin American region, and the strongest country that we have a presence in, that we work with, is Peru, and we also work in Bolivia, Ecuador, Panama, and we also have an important presence in El Salvador. In the case of Peru, we have been operating our office for over 10 years. We have executed or are executing more than 70 projects, and the projects in Peru we work on with local companies, with local engineers, and this is a very important point because for the execution of projects, we not only work with our headquarters engineers. We usually deploy 20 to 30 of our engineers, but the remainder of the engineers that we work with, we hire locally for project execution. And as we execute the project, we provide technical training, we share our technology, and also we receive great support and we learn about the local culture and things that could prove to be problems as the project is carried out. We consider Latin America a very important long-term strategic partner. In our company, we have this vision of continuing in Peru, to grow in Peru in the way we are growing, and to expand our businesses, not only remain in Peru, but to expand to Colombia, Panama, El Salvador, and to have a more relevant presence in Latin America, sharing and contributing toward technical growth in each country. Carolina certainly later on will talk about the barriers that you have encountered along the way. I'll ask you about that later.
And ask you three, how can Latin America move beyond exporting commodities and build a stronger partnership with Asia based on investment, technology, and value chains? Let's start with Professor Fukunari.
I think one big difference between LAC and Asia is the way of doing in international division of labor. In case of Asia, particularly Northeast Asia and Southeast Asia, the very large portion of international trade is machinery parts and components. They actually, particularly the export side, the proportion of machinery parts out of total merchandise exports is above 20%. So for some countries, actually, reaches 40%. So that means that actually machinery parts are imported a lot and exported a lot too at the same time. So that means that international division of labor is really done task by task or production process-wise international division of labor. And in Latin America, only two countries are doing that, Mexico and Costa Rica. And other countries cannot really utilize that kind of economic opportunities to attract international division of labor. In the world, some Asian countries, and then Mexico, Costa Rica, and also some Eastern European countries are doing that. Other countries are developing in areas. Actually, that kind of division of labor is not done at all. What's the difference? That's the connectivity. So that's a physical connectivity and at the same time institutional connectivity. That connectivity is one of the very important necessary conditions to do that kind of international division of labor. So physical connectivity, I mean here logistics infrastructure, and also institutional connectivity that includes trade liberalization, trade facilitation, and others. So those should be there. Otherwise, task by task international division of labor cannot really do that. So I think this is a good opportunity to start doing that because of geopolitical tension and others. Global value chains are really reshuffled now. So it's a chance to come into those kind of value chains. I hope that the LAC can get that kind of opportunity to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Ashok Kumar Bhartia is General Manager and CEO at India Exim Bank. The same question, Ashok. How can we reimagine our relationship with Asia?
Yeah, first of all, I mean, a warm welcome to all the participants present here. And it is a great pleasure to be a part of this session today. And we thank CAF to facilitate our participation in this session. Now coming to LAC and Asia, I think there's a great opportunity for both these regions to collaborate between them. LAC region has it's a strength in having rich being in minerals, energy sector, and they have critical minerals, and they can contribute a lot to the rest of world. Their mineral enrichment is very much aligned with what the world needs today. The world needs green energy and energy transition, and as of now, the trade between Asia and LAC is not to its potential, and that also it is concentrated in very few countries like China, Japan, South Korea, India, and I think it needs much more diversification than that. And these natural resources, whether it is in energy, whether it is in critical minerals, the LAC countries need to leverage those and go into downstream processing of these industries. And Asian countries, they have all the capabilities. They have, many of them have very rich industrial sectors which can really contribute to help these countries to further develop their industries, generate employment, and these natural resources can be useful for rest of the world. And there are many templates now. I mean, LAC countries have signed FTAs with some of the Asian countries, and then with India we have PTA with Mercosur, we have PTA with Chile, and the government of India is also trying to have FTA with now Chile and Peru. Those are under negotiations. And recently, LAC also they signed FTA with the European Union. Like this, they need to do many more efforts so that that more and more institutional and government to government collaboration happens. And I think there are forums like BRICS, IBSA is there, and then from India led International Solar Alliance is also there. So all these, and South cooperation, all these platforms can be really useful to creating those collaborations.
Thank you. Real interesting. Juan Miranda is the senior advisor of the MCDF, the Multilateral Cooperation Center for Development Finance. Juan, is there a new path to reimagine the relation between Latin America and Asia beyond exporting commodities? Welcome to the stage.
Good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for attending this. Switch off. Yes.
I think it's better.
Anyway, good. I think one of the first gaps and huge difference that exists between the two regions is the level of investment in connectivity infrastructure. Without that, it is difficult to be competitive. Without that, it's difficult to have high levels of productivity. And of course, lack of connectivity would limit trade. In Asia, the intra-regional trade is a lot higher than it's the case in Latin America. We have countries that are next to one another, and yet they trade very, very little among them. So one thing to figure out, if you're looking for pathways, is what on earth can be done to resolve, at least to improve that kind of, or reduce that kind of problem. The infrastructure that I'm talking about and connectivity is both hard and soft. Hard infrastructure, of course, the usual suspects include ports, airports, roads, railway. Soft is becoming of huge importance, not only in terms of trade facilitation that the professor highlighted, customs harmonization, so that the things that pass the border can do so quickly and not in thousands of hours, like is the case in some cases. And then we have the new brave new world, which is the digital aspect. That too will transform and maybe help some of the countries in Latin America to leap forward in terms of efficiency and productivity. So I suspect that you would all agree that that is a major restraining factor. Of course, and I can come back to this, how to put together these projects, those investments with high quality levels, with the right financing structures. Those are the basic elements that I can discuss maybe later that make things happen. And they are constraints today for sure.
Well, precisely. Let me stay with you. What are the most important conditions needed to unlock more LAC Asia investment and trade? And by that, I mean rules, infrastructure, logistics, or financing. What do you think are the most important conditions needed to unlock that?
Okay, so I mentioned infrastructure. If you can't get to the port quickly and between the port and your destination point fast and efficiently, then we got a problem. The other one I mentioned is, of course, the soft part, the trade elements, the trade facilitation. And one thing that Asia has less of, and I'm generalizing because Asia is not homogeneous. Asia is not only China, but one thing that they have less of is non-tariff barriers. So if those are in place, of course, they act as a bottleneck to get things done. And I think that there is tremendous space to learn from and to build alliances, collaboration platforms that actually pave the way for that to happen. The other thing is the financial architecture, the availability of long-term, if it's the private sector, investments of non-recourse financing. And maybe in the other part of the world, we're a little bit beyond the level that we find in some parts of Latin America. So infrastructure, bricks and mortar, soft aspects, including digitalization, and of course, money. There is another element that I think is important, and I'm not really sure whether how far the two regions are one from the other, and it is the capability to execute projects. We can design, we can put them together, we might even be able to finance them, but they have to be done by the right contractors in the right way. And I guess that perhaps there is still a little bit of catching up in Latin America with respect to Asia.
We're going to see in minutes the private sector vision about these matters in head of the Carolina. But Professor, let me ask you the same questions. What are the barriers we got to unlock to make it happen?
So that kind of projects have egg and chicken problem. So multiple conditions should be there to go ahead, actually. So I said that connectivity is one of the necessary conditions. But so without any demand, that kind of project cannot really go there, actually. So we have to do at the same time investment promotion, the betterment of business climate, and those should go one by one, actually, together. So I think, yeah, maybe we have to start from what sort of industries we have to grow up and how we would attract that kind of investment. That could be foreign or domestic to start out. And then what sort of conditions should be there to make that kind of a project happen. So once those are really done, then I think people can be motivated to really finish up a sort of a project. I think yeah, that should work somehow. We don't say that some people are lazy, some people are not really very motivated. It's not the case. I think once a project is really credible and then implementable, then people can do it.
Thank you, Professor. Ashok, what would be your answer to these challenges?
Yeah, I think as far as lack is concerned, this area, I mean, they need to first of all ease uh, the tariff and non-tariff barriers. They need to come down, and the LAC region should look at its own strengths, its endowment of natural resources, and it should have conducive policies through which it can attract investment in those very areas. And it need to collaborate more with the with other countries. Like for example, there are best practices in every industry. I would give you example of pharmaceuticals now. For pharmaceuticals, there are international benchmarks that, like if a pharmaceutical product is certified by US FDA, then probably there is no need for the same pharmaceutical products when they are imported into these countries to have one more cumbersome layer of investigation on them. It wastes a lot of time, and that is just one example. Then there are many other areas where which processes need to be eased out. Although there are already some good examples of all these processes governments are trying to facilitate, like Pro Colombia is one example. Similar kind of initiatives needs to be taken by many other governments also. Some countries are doing well, like Mexico is one example. Chile is also doing very well, but that is limited to uh, a few countries only. Now Brazil, for example, is such a big country. It has huge amount of natural resources which the world needs, but it needs to attract those investments from various countries who has the capabilities, who has technical skills, technical manpower, like India has. India has is doing very well in IT services. It is doing very well in automobiles, pharmaceuticals. So those strengths, if they are clubbed with the needs and strengths of Latin American countries, I think both regions can do really well.
Those are good countries, but can you tell the countries in Latin America that are worst in that specific area?
I think that is a tricky one, but yeah, I mean, again, there is a lot of scope for some of the countries. Like I would say, maybe Paraguay is one, Venezuela for various. Yeah, I mean, everyone knows, but then let's see the huge potential this country has. And one particular example I would give Brazil, maybe like Brazil is such a huge country, such a vast amount of natural resources it has, whether it's are in hydro, solar, biofuels, then in agro commodities. So this country can do much more if it collaborates with the right kind of technical capabilities with other countries, and attracts the right kind of investment, and and make itself as a manufacturing hub for many other products. I think then it can really be a flag bearer for rest of the Latin American region.
Thank you, Chuck. Carolina, les decía que eres la representante del sector privado en este panel y tu voz en ese sentido va a ser muy importante.
Carolina, you are the private sector representative on this panel, so your voice is important. What barriers are you seeing in Latin America that prevent us from reaching our potential, which should be eliminated? As Asian business people, developing projects in Latin America, it's not an easy endeavor. Not only the language, but also because of the contracts, the agreements, which fall under the regulations, the laws of the various countries. And these regulations are so different from those of the Asian countries. So this is a huge barrier. And then you really have to review and decide whether you want to participate in a project in the region. So we are working on a solution to this. We work with CAF and other multilateral banks because everything they do is based on international standards, and we are used to agreements, contracts falling under the standards for the private sector. Perhaps if it could be easier and not have any fear or as much fear when it comes to the contracts, so that they are more standardized when it comes to risk, to the legal aspect. And we have been awarded several projects with multilateral, bilateral financing in the region.
Asia could find here in Latin America and Caribbean.
Sí, creo que tenemos dos barreras. Una, creo que más desde el nivel psicológico, que es un ejemplo que yo
Have several barriers. One of them is psychological. We have a very Eurocentric perspective in Latin America and the Caribbean. Our map has Europe at the center and Asia's way too far away. But if we have a map that is drawn by the Chinese, by the Asians, this brings us closer and helps us bring down that psychological barrier, and it will shorten the process of doing what we have to do. And at the bank, our technical staff is trying to figure out how we can bring more opportunities, more knowledge to the region from Asia. We have been working very, very arduously in India, in South Korea, Japan, because we want to bring this so that we can interact on a business level. And I believe in interaction. If we can have a lot of interaction with Asian businessmen, a banking sector between Asia and Latin America, this will help bring down the barriers. And there are many similarities between Latin America and South Asia with their economic system. So I think this is something that we need to leverage, and we should not close this window of opportunity. And Jacques' answer was very interesting, that Mexico and Chile seem to be doing better.
LAC Asia agenda, and what would make these projects scalable and less risky? What do you think about this matter?
It's a hopeful sector or not. This is one dimension, but I think we really have to do in order to generate innovation is certainly machinery industries, particularly electronics, because those are really R&D intensive sector, generates a lot of innovation in the whole economy and the society. I think that is what LAC really needs. So in order to reduce the risk, I'm not sure, but certainly one thing is that development should be a sort of incremental in a sense. And then so the conversation between the public sector and the private sector is also very important. We have to make many troubleshooting and other things in the middle. We cannot really plan everything from the beginning. So I think that kind of incremental approach to complete the initiation of industry. Eventually, we really have to have industrial agglomeration. So that it takes time. So I think we have to have reviews and an adjustment, the conversation with the private sector. Those should go step by step.
Which sectors are offering the biggest opportunities nowadays?
I think in new technology, we have countries can leap forward very quickly because of that. But Latin America has commodities. Commodities need to be processed to add value. To process, you have to attract investors and financiers. And to do that, you have to have the right environment for business to function. The one thing that rather than just industries, one thing that this conversation reminds me of is a study done by McKinsey a few years ago, first in relation to Africa, and they call it the African infrastructure paradox, and infrastructure being mostly connectivity one. I think that applies to Latin America as well. And the storyline, or the bottom line, and the storyline from that is that the region has tremendous opportunities. They have projects and they have finance, access to finance. But despite that, every effort that has been done to put together, let's say, feasibility studies for those projects, those transactions, have very high mortality rates. They never or hardly ever end up with financial close. And there are several constraints that play against this whole thing. And I guess the main finding from that, and I suspect that it is applicable for Latin America and the Caribbean, is project preparation is low quality. And with that, you don't go and talk to any bank or private equity investor because they don't waste that kind of time in putting together something that they shouldn't. Somebody else should. So that's when I talk about preparation, I'm talking about a complete package of what is basic minimum due diligence, so both technical, financial, legal, regulatory, environmental, social, and of course execution risk, as the DOA has indicated they face from time to time. So perhaps that's one area to focus on.
In that sense, what makes a project really bankable for international investors?
Okay, so if we're talking about private sector transactions, then, and if you want to take it to financial close, what is constraint number one is making sure that you have a deal structure that everybody appreciates and that the risks are split fairly between the various parties. So, and that happens both in PPPs, but also in purely private sector standalone transactions. What kind of risks does a bank face and see? Well, they have investor risk or sponsor risk. They see the regulatory and the commercial risk, and they see the implementation risks. If you package all those things together, other things being equal, because you have to be able then to take the product to the port and then from the port to the market, then the chances of getting it done are significantly, well, hugely different and more attractive. But I would say that those are the kind of the elements that I would package within. Is the project prepared well? Is the risk apportioned equitably between the various parties? And will the bank or banks or private equity will be able to look at them quickly and say, yeah, I'm in, because I'm going to get my money back.
Yes. So let me go back to the question of which sectors do you think are offering the biggest opportunities nowadays?
Yeah, I think in addition to the traditional sectors in Latin America, like energy, automobiles, financial services, etc. I think the one of the most important sector which has huge opportunity is in case of IT and digitalization. Now, this sector is exponentially growing everywhere because of artificial intelligence. Then there are data centers are coming up, and digital transition, cloud transition. All these areas provide huge energy, and very much connected with this sector is energy also. The kind of demand this very sector has resulted for energy is unimaginable. And there also, I mean, there is a complementarity, and Latin America can help the rest of the world to bridge the gap for renewable energy.
Pero sí, antes de darle la palabra a Carolina para preguntarle por una idea específica o por un caso de éxito.
Or giving the floor to Carolina so she can talk about the various opportunities that are being offered in Latin America. Do you see anyone who's leading the pack? Well, actually, we see a great opportunity for physical infrastructure. I think that LAC has a very important gap in this regard. And we imagine that, the gaps we face here in that respect in Latin America, they've already been resolved in Asia. So, for example, acquiring massive amounts of energy, energy transition, transportation, any quandary we face has probably, it's been solved in Asia. And this, assuming, coming with preconceived notions about projects and all that, CAF does not distribute profits from projects. We focus on what the region needs to prepare better projects. And what we do with MCDF is we work so that Asian actors can enter. And if we can improve our physical infrastructure, we can make a great jump, and this will solve problems in other sectors such as education, tourism, health. But you really do need good physical infrastructure. Carolina, if you can please talk to us about one success story that you deem important to mention related with DOA, what has been done here in Latin America. As I mentioned previously, I work in the infrastructure sector in engineering, and in our case, executing projects in Peru, we carried out an important project for the new Chinchero Airport in Peru, and this is based on a state to state contract agreement. The Peruvian government actually the Peruvian government issued a public tender directed at countries interested, which are capable of being technically capable of carrying out the Chichero Airport project, because it does require a great deal of advanced technology and knowledge to advance the project. So for the first time, we were able to work on this Chinchero project. And we faced several barriers, several difficulties while executing the project. But we are making progress currently. And we are solving any issues, any local barriers. We are working on solving them with the national authorities, the Peruvian authorities and institutions. And we do believe that it is going to be a successful example when we're done.
To improve, to get better at this. Just a final message from Asia to Latin America. What would be your last call to Latin America, your final message in this conversation?
LAC has a huge untapped opportunities to get into task-by-task international division of labor. The key portion is machinery industries, high-tech industries. That's what Latin America can do, and they should do that. In order to do that, a series of infrastructure projects and others are very important. And infrastructure is not for infrastructure itself, but for supporting specific economic activities. So parts and components are moving timely and in a reliable manner. That's a goal. And then LAC can do that. And definitely, so we have to. The Asia can have a lot of collaboration with LAC countries too.
So thank you very much. Something to add, Ashok, one to end this conversation?
Yeah, I think, I mean, there's a lot of opportunities for Indian companies in Latin America, and Government of India has taken several initiatives to facilitate those initiatives. There are like, in India needs critical minerals for its energy transition, and it has very youthful, skillful workforce, which can be used by all these countries to attract those talents and develop capabilities in these countries. And I think for Exim Bank especially, we also have opportunity to work with the development financial institutions and partners like CAF and Inter-American Development Banks, and contribute to the development of Latin America, and facilitate the collaboration between India and like.
Yeah, sure. When you have some few left minutes or seconds, I think. Something to add?
If you want to blend, pick up where Asia left, just I would say two things: learn
Yes.
from their mistakes,
Mhm.
because they've also made them, and secondly, establish collaboration platforms and partnerships. Maybe third, work with CAF and MCDF.
So, CAF, ¿algún mensaje final para concluir esta interesantísima conversación?
No, pues agradecerles.
Conclude this very interesting conversation. No, thank you everyone for being here today. And CAF is at your service to be the bridge between Asia and Latin America. And we are holding a private roundtable with all the Asian countries in which CAF will bring to the table all its department leaders to engage in this conversation. And I urge you to build a very close relationship between your countries and our region. Thank you very much.
In the air tonight, oh Lord, oh Lord. Well, if you told me we will try, and I will not lend a hand. I've seen your face before, my friend, but I don't know if you know who I am.
staying all this time to listen to these conversations and exchanges of opinions and experiences that are so useful and that can be applied in a region. Right now, we are going to talk about Water 2030, adaptation to climate change, infrastructure, governance. I would like to remind you that this is a quiet room, and I would like to remind you to use your headphones, your earbuds, so that you are able to listen to the conversations, so you can follow the panels. And we will show you a QR code on the screen if you don't have it already, so that you can access the audio portion. And we will listen to two guests who are going to share the CAF perspective on this issue, and I would like to ask our guests. They are Fernando Peña and Nicolás Mendiros. They are two of the project directors at CAF, and thank you very much as you introduce this new topic. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Nicolás Mendioros. I am with the Office of the Director for Infrastructure for Development. Can you hear me? Can you hear me okay? I will begin again. I don't think you were able to hear me before. My name is Nicolás Mendioros. I work with the Office of Infrastructure for Development at CAF. Welcome to this very important panel. For us, we are all aware of the importance and relevance that cities have acquired recently for governments. And our next panel, correction, is going to be a panel of mayors from Latin America and the Caribbean who will talk about how digital transformation is key to understand the challenges that emerge and how to work together to find solutions, not only from the institutional standpoint, but also to provide better access to services offered by the city. And I will have my colleague Nicolás Peña Herrera speak. I am Fernando Peña Herrera. I'm the Director for Urban Infrastructure, Water and Sanitation for CAF, and we have worked with the local regional authorities, and this is one of our most important projects when it comes to digital transformation. We see that the demand of this sector becomes increasingly sophisticated, and it goes beyond technology. This type of services brings citizens closer to mayors, to the authorities, to the municipality, and it involves subnational governments. So we support the paths followed by the various cities. I know they're all different cases, but I know they all reach a point of confluence. And we are going to see in this panel how firsthand we will hear from those who are striving to provide a better quality of life for their citizens. And now our moderator has the floor, so she can introduce our panel.
I'm not the one whose memories still keeping. I'm not the one who's stuck in.
It is a pleasure to be here. I would like to welcome our distinguished guests. First of all, we have Camila Merino. She is the mayor of Vitacura. Camila Merino, if you could please join us. We're going to have Cristian Eduardo Zamora. He is the mayor of Cuenca, Ecuador. And Rosana Chala. She is the intendant or mayor of Tucumán. He is the mayor of Escobedo in Mexico. Welcome, everyone. If you could please take a seat over here. We have the men on one side and the women on the other. I am Glenda Umania, international journalist, and we were always promised that we would have flying cars, that was the future. But I think in Latin America we would be happy if the bus would really, truly arrive at the scheduled time according to the app. We'd be happy if we didn't have to take with us multiple copies of our personal ID documents when we're going to carry out any type of government or transaction. And we're going to talk now about cities which are not only intelligent but also more humane. And we are going to share this wonderful space for camaraderie. We're not going to have long presentations. We're just going to share our experiences. And if I can ask you quickly, each one of you, which was your aha moment when you fell in love with some type of technological or innovative aspect that called to you and said, I have to implement this? Rosana, we start with you. Thank you for the invitation, for allowing me to be a member of this panel, which has to do with technology, but it addresses technology as a means and not an end in itself. Its relationship to citizens, that it is citizen-centered. That's how we approach our mandate. I'm a doctor, a gynecologist. I was a director of a hospital, and then I was a minister of health during a pandemic. So for me, data was fundamental. And in order to have data, you need to have digitalization, technology, data. And I was so surprised when I arrived at the municipality. There was no computer, no system. Everything was a hard copy, printed. And I was scared because in medicine, we need to know whether our patient is diabetic or not. A blood sugar level reading of 105 is not the same as one of 70. And I began to think, how do we begin with our city if we lack a baseline? What am I going to do? How can I have indicators, objectives, strategic plans, objectives? So we began by digitalizing all processes, not only internal ones, because first of all, we work for our citizens. Because our citizens, when they had to carry out any type of transaction with a municipality, I mean, if they needed to have a tree cut down, they would have to go in person. So the first thing we had to do was to become closer to our citizens. And the first thing we needed to work on was an application, an app, which is called Ciudades MT, and we use this so that citizens can reach us and we can respond. When we began working with data, why did we start with data? We need to have data that provides certainty, a baseline for measurement, and we developed a data strategy. Its first element included city data. The second one was data on our residents. How many people do we have? How old are they? Do they have internet or not? And third, we needed to have management data so we could have indicators. And you need to make a very good diagnosis in order to reach the right solution. You need the proper diagnosis to cure a patient. And because I am a medical doctor, I always look for the exact, the specific data. Because to manage a city, to treat a city, you need to have the data. For example, how many trees must I plant to improve the air quality in my city, to decrease pollution? So we work based on this criteria when it comes to our data strategy. Of course, we have support through trainings. I can share that if we have time. But the data was compiled. It's accurate data, it's transparent data, and anyone can check the data. And we started from a passive transparency, which asks for data, to active, where people can actually view the data. Well, today we live in a very clear stage of the digital transformation. We wanted to reach our neighbors, our municipalities. We need to be more efficient. And we began with having an office that would review the projects. And now we have an office that has georeference our residents, our inhabitants, and the data allows us to look at information on complaints, on resolution of complaints, etc. But I want to emphasize security, which is our citizens' main demand nowadays, and we've been able to reduce the data statistics in the 4 years I've been in office. We've reduced it by 50%, and this is not only based on modern technology, but it provides a way for the municipality to work jointly with the police, with the prosecutor's office, to dismantle crime gangs, to identify and investigate crimes. It also helps us better organize police patrols and criminals become more creative, criminals become more tech savvy. And when you look at this, you realize that what makes a difference is working as part of a network. Last year, crimes were really reduced. But then we saw, the data showed us that the thieves were targeting a specific expensive car make, and because it was easy to clone the keys. So we began to be able to locate these vehicles when they were parked in public spaces, and we were able to stop the criminal gangs. We caught them red-handed, and we were able to better control this problem. And that's the difference that technology makes. In our commune, we have 1,000 cameras. From the moment a car enters our commune, we have license plate, registration plate readers, and thus we've been able to make our commune the safest one in Chile. That's so interesting, and I think many of us will think, I want that for my city. And Christian, please talk to us the moment in which you opened your eyes to the most efficient, impactful technology. Well, actually, when I was a student in Cuenca, I wanted to study abroad and I was able to win a scholarship. I studied in Mexico and then in Switzerland, and that's where the story starts. I went to Switzerland to study and I saw that the trains and the buses arrived as scheduled, that everything works like a Swiss clock or watch. And I said, wow, we need this in Latin America. We can also develop this. And that's where my story starts. When I was a young student, this had an impact on me, and it was very interesting to me. I've been a mayor for about 2.5 years, but the issue of public transportation in Cuenca began when I was a councilman. And we had a proposal, we implemented a proposal that has made Cuenca one of the only 3 cities in Ecuador that allows to use a card to swipe a card to be able to use public transportation. People no longer have to search for coins to use public transportation. So now that was a starting point. We have a tram, we have buses, and we have public bikes, and every system had its own card system, and they were not integrated. And now we're moving toward having an integrated transportation system. Recently, I inaugurated the first 10 technological dream bus stops like the ones I saw in Switzerland, where you have the monitor display that will give you the approximate arrival time for your bus. Now, at the technological bus stop stations, we have security cameras to provide security for those waiting for public transportation. And now we are working on having people use their cell phones to refill their public transportation cards. They no longer have to go to the corner store to do this. And inside the actual buses, we're working on the monitoring system. We have this one control room, which is the most innovative, advanced one in Ecuador, providing this security monitoring CCTV service. But this began many years back. And sometimes these stories come to our minds, and in my case, they allowed me, now that I'm a mayor, to be able to incorporate these best practices, because in Latin America we can implement them, we can incorporate them. We have dreams and we try to bring them down to reality and we build on them. I'd like to talk to you how digitalization started in my municipality, Escobedo, Nuevo León, Mexico. As any good candidate who has just won an election, I arrived with a head full of dreams, with promises I had made to my voters. And then when I arrived in office and I look at the treasury and I see that the treasury office has no money, I wondered, what am I going to do? And that's where the digitalization program started, first internally within the municipality, to have control of public monies. On my cell phone, I can see the revenue, the expenses of the municipality. I can see the control, the metrics for those municipal employees that require health care. I can see, what's going on with them, the medication they need. And this puts up barriers against corruption. And then we began to work on other projects that were external looking, not to benefit our administration, but to benefit citizens. And what did we do? We designed the digitalization of all requests for urban zoning development, any remodeling projects, or if you want to build a warehouse storage facility like the one Mercado Libre is building, everything can be done digitally, online. The company, the citizens, don't have to go in person to the municipality. They don't even have to go to the bank. Payments, everything is done online. And in the end, the official statement, resolution, and the blueprints, they're approved digitally. And this has affected revenue because in 2024, our revenue ended up being $170 million from 70 million, which was what we had in revenue years back. And we have established a strong partnership with businessmen to generate wealth and prosperity. And the businessmen paid the taxes that that are fair, and those come into the treasury. Everyone pays their fair share, and thus we can have programs that are socially focused and benefit people. Now, all this connection, innovation, what challenges have citizens faced when it comes to adjusting, because there's always resistance to change. Before we move on to public-private partnerships, I'd like you to talk to us about your experience in facing these obstacles, the resistance of citizens. Well, we actually have an interesting story regarding security in our city. It's a problem everywhere. We had a problem with vandalism, especially in public spaces. And then that led us to, analyze, to cover public plazas, public spaces. So we placed security cameras, and we went up to 500 cameras because we have a very advanced control room, CCTV control room. And what we did was we installed speakers in public spaces and in the plazas. And for example, if we saw a lady pulling or trying to steal a plant from the public spaces, we were able to tell her using the speaker, "Madam, please do not take out that plant." If we saw that someone took their dog out and they did not pick up its feces, we were able to communicate with them and say, "The lady in the white sweater, please pick up your dog's feces." And people started to become a little bit afraid because we were talking back to them. We were watching them, and they didn't like that at first. They didn't like it that much at first, but we were able to improve security over time. And then we also do collective tours of certain areas. We have an intelligent bus stop in an area where there's young university students waiting for public transportation. We installed a help button if they have a need for police, medical, or citizen security assistance. All they have to do is push the button and ask for it. So we have a strong emphasis on security, and technology facilitated this. And the speakers really had an impact. And other cities began to look at this approach because it really helped us reduce vandalism in public places. Well, I understand your question to be the problems of implementing technology. Actually, the hardest group to reach is the elderly, because when you start using digital tools, the elderly prefer to take care of everything in person. They don't like to use a cell phone. They want to do everything. They prefer to do things in person. So what we did was we maintained in-person services, but we also provided training on how to use the digital applications. And we launched several campaigns, and we saw that there are certain platforms that the elderly, for example, prefer. They would rather use WhatsApp than a specific app. So you have to try to test out and see which platform works best in what context, and there are huge benefits. And then when particular specific groups meet, such as groups for seniors, senior clubs, then they will go and share among their friends. And then this improves the relationship for this specific age sector, because then they can, connect more with their children, with their grandchildren, with all the social media tools. This age group, the elderly, they discovered a whole world out there where they could keep in better touch, closer touch with their relatives. Yes, and it not only involves the elderly, senior citizens, but there are population groups that don't have access to these tools because they don't have the data, or especially women might have a harder time accessing this. Before we proceed, I want to share something that happened about a year ago in my municipality, and I think it's appropriate to mention it in this case. In many cities, we have these cameras that register speeding cars and issue the applicable fine. And once I saw, this person that was going like, 80 miles per hour. And that was like unbelievable. And I personally called that person and I streamed it. And I talked to this person and I said, hey, this is the mayor. I just watched the footage and I saw you driving by X Street at 80 miles per hour. You're endangering people. And I chatted with the person. And what did the person do? Well, at first, this person didn't believe I was the one calling, but then I guess he identified me by my voice. And then the response from the people who were watching the live stream, they were saying, you know what, this cannot be. So this was so effective that we eliminated the radars, and this year, deaths due to vehicle accidents were much lower than last year. And, we used tools to broach this issue. And another area in which we made inroads is when it comes to the municipality finances. You can pay them online, but then we have people who insist on paying in person because they feel that they have physical proof that they paid their taxes. They feel that, this is the proper way to do it. But we have many migrants. We have many people who live in the United States, but their children have to take care of paying their property taxes, etc., etc. So what we did was we opened up digital channels so that they could make online transactions, international transactions to pay. And we now see that 40% are paying digitally and 60% are paying in person. So the percentages surprised us because it should be otherwise. The we to the people who are waiting in line. If a lady is waiting in line, now we have people who approach them and say, for example, Madam, are you aware that we have digital tools that can help you avoid waiting a long time in line to pay your taxes? Because we need to have less bureaucracy. We have to have less people focused on taking care of people in person. We need to be more efficient, and we also need to take care of our residents. For example, we have to provide good attention. We have to make sure we have tents so they're not waiting out in the hot sun. But we have to do all this, and we have to work on public campaigns, especially targeting the elderly. And actually, we faced internal resistance. We had to lay off 50% of the urban development staff because they said, no, no, people should not be able to upload their documents to the platform. It's so hard to follow up on these requests. And what we did was we hired technologically savvy young people to do this. And we told these young people, you can do it from a home office. We also found resistance among our citizens. So we had brigades that visited each business, each home. If a citizen needs to use the platform, we show them what's available out there, and we have modules in the municipal offices to help people out with digital processes requests. And one of the issues we experienced was with interoperability. For example, you can begin your request with urban development, but you need permits from the environment office. And so we made them interoperable so that citizens don't have to go to each institution. They don't have to access every single platform within the urban development platform. They can take care of everything. So this has allowed us to externally receive support from business people, because for us, I would like to emphasize, business people are essential in the development of the city. And I believe that in underdeveloped countries, we have this underdevelopment because there's no local, support with for the municipality. So we need to have the various sectors work with us so we're strong, so we can build stronger countries. Can you give us an example, taking advantage of the fact that you have highlighted the successful public private partnerships? Actually, what we did is we really promoted our economy, developed our economy. It has grown greatly with digital processes. We have huge investments. We have a Costco. It's a 7-hectare Costco store. Millions of dollars invested in it. So thanks to digitalization, there's a better climate for investment. Absolutely. Digitalization has empowered us. We've had an explosion of 300% in projects. And due to this digitalization issue, this has led to a growth in our gross revenue. What has been your experience with public private partnerships? Well, the city has always had several partnerships, but there's a new challenge in the city. The municipality has several public utilities, public utility companies. We have the potable water, the cemeteries, all the services handled by the municipality. And what we're doing now is we're trying to figure out how we can become more involved with the generation of energy, because energy generation is going to be the future of revenue. There's going to be great profits. And that's what I'm telling municipalities, that they should start investing in it. Today we had the visit of our energy minister, and I asked her, can you please look at wind energy products so that the municipality is an investor, the national government is an investor, the community can be an investor. We all consume energy. We should all be a part of it, a part of this issue. We're working on that, but we need this government's political will. We're looking at concessions awarded by the state, but we are trying to have the municipality move beyond water, electricity. It continues to be a challenge. Yes, it continues to be a challenge, and I think we have to insistently knock on doors, because the state cannot take care of everything. It has to decentralize, and it has to decentralize services that it cannot handle to have efficient services with the private sector. And if overseen by the government, Ecuador really needs energy. We need to narrow our deficit, and maybe if they can allow business people and local governments to participate in projects, this could solve it. Intelligent cities, Camila, if you can share with us a successful story involving public-private partnerships. We have many partnerships with universities, with other municipalities, with companies, but I want to focus on a project that we are reaching the final stages with CAF, and CAF decided to build its building, to build its structure in our commune in Santiago. They're also going to build an innovation center for Latin America, and it is going to focus on solving urban problems. So how was this identified? Well, we figured out how to operate this center because nowadays the new technologies, if we use them the right way, they will help us solve many issues, beginning with security, including climate change, and many companies really want to invest and they need to have a venue to test the technology, see if it works. And we're waiting for this center to be built. We're conducting an open innovation bid, and we have a medium-sized company founded by university students. They, developed this wonderful tool, the panic button, which was well received, and it's gaining wider recognition. You should have brought that. No, it's just that it not only brings security, it provides peace of mind to users. And there's also another pilot project that we are carrying out in our community. It's a signal inhibitor readers. It's something that the criminals use. So, for example, cars cannot lock properly, so they have easier access to them. And other countries have used this in the defense sector because this technology identifies exactly where signals are being inhibited, and this has led to the arrest of the criminal gangs involved. And then you realize that perhaps you need other technologies in addition to CCTV. You can, gain this knowledge from looking at your neighboring municipality. It's something that you can incorporate. We need this. A great experience, a cooperation experience we had was with the Fundación Bloomberg. In the first stage, they provided training for our staff in regards to digitalization, and they helped us shorten this process. And now, again, with cooperation, we are working with artificial intelligence, the one that we generate in our municipality. We learn how to use it correctly, use an evidence-based approach, and this has positioned us in such a way that we can follow up on programs in a very short period of time, something that took us a very long time before. Now, with artificial intelligence, we're able to shorten the timeline. With the help of the Bloomberg Foundation and Johns Hopkins, we had an interesting experience with data management, with having a portal for data. We're developing now a very user-friendly chatbot called Ciudadano Migue, and we're testing this chatbot so that we want the algorithm to be your regular Tucuman citizen that can speak to our citizen just like any other Tucuman person. We want to reach out to the neighborhoods. We want to have a presence in the territory too, because we don't want digitalization to keep us away from the territory. So when we go to the various neighborhoods, we want to teach senior citizens to use the digital tools. And we want people to know that even though we may have the best tools, the best technology, we're always there for them. And this we did with Bloomberg. And I'm also a researcher, and with the CONICET organization, we were able to work on a project that introduces a very high protein content tortilla. We're going to launch it and show young people and children that we have this food that will greatly contribute to their nutrition. And, people are used to having, their breakfast, which is high in protein. And now we want to introduce children and young people to this very high protein vegetable fat tortilla that will benefit their nutrition. And we've done all the research to figure out what tortilla was best to offer to this population. And we've also been working on a cooked mate, which is a traditional drink of northern of Argentina. And this drink generates anemia. And now we are trying to infuse iron into this traditional drink so that there's no iron deficiency in the young population. We're almost out of time, but I'd like to ask you in 30 seconds, because you've shared wonderful experiences with us. Some have left me amazed. In 30 seconds, what is your dream? What is your vision for the next stage for your cities? Where are you headed? Which is your goal project? Well, to continue working on public security, we have a great partnership with CALEA, an international certification firm, to continue training our policemen. Our police force is certified, and the police academy at our C4, we have trained them, and we have shooting ranges so they can practice. We have high flying drones. They can fly up to 1.5 kilometers. The battery lasts hours, and it provides automatic monitoring. We want to invest in that because for us, security is the beginning of a virtuous cycle. If you have security, you attract investment, you create more jobs, households are more secure, they have less problems. We want to make life easier for our citizens with a program called Visor Urbano, which can let our residents know how many potholes there are in the area, how many trees are in the area, how many light poles are in the area. So we are betting on artificial intelligence to help us do this, and we want to work on the lower income neighborhoods with schools so that children can work and learn robotics and 3D. Well, security is an issue that affects all cities. And I dream every day because in many of our country cities, we don't have the coercive presence of the police, but I want to have the technology to take care of people. Maybe we cannot avoid a mugging, but we want the person, the regular person, to feel that we are taking care of them, that we're trying to protect them. And that's one of my dreams. Rosana? I can't stop thinking. We can hear you, yes. It's the mic is fine. Yes, we were hearing you. We heard you. I always think like a doctor, and my great challenge is to reduce car accidents, vehicle accidents. In my city, there's many motorcycle drivers, riders, many parents, many children who don't use the proper gear for protection. And I want to develop a monitoring system so that everyone wears, we can monitor people. And we want to make sure through the system that people are wearing the proper headgear, the proper protection. And in Argentina, we have many vehicle accidents. We have many fatalities. We lose 11 Argentines per day to traffic accidents. Rosana, we have greatly advanced in security. Crimes have been reduced by half, but this continues to be what our Chilean citizens demand. We want to have a sheriff's office that is built and equipped at the international level. We have to have the technology to tackle crime, to fight crime. We want to be able to stop criminals before they commit offenses. And I was talking about this digital transformation office that is working on many projects. And every day we see that there's so many more alternatives, so many more opportunities, and we'll continue to invest to make these projects a reality. We have weekly meetings to see keep up on advances, and we see at every meeting that there's more projects in which artificial intelligence will approve building permit projects. So we want to leverage what we have digitalized to be able to use artificial intelligence to approve these requests, these processes. We want artificial intelligence to support our civil servants to really leverage artificial intelligence. Well, I congratulate you because behind all these sensors, the data, the technology, the most important thing is the human connection. And you have undoubtedly explained this wonderfully. You've given us a bird's eye view of your work. We'd like to ask for a round of applause for our panelists. Good afternoon, and I am Glenda Umaña. We shall continue. It is a good time to begin the final panel in this green room, last but not least. So we shall begin this panel, Water 2030 Access, Climate Adaptation, Infrastructure, and Governance. And I will announce our panelists and the moderator. I'll start with the ladies. I will call the Executive Director of Aquafundo, Mariela Sanchez, the President of the Caribbean Region Water Association, World Water Association, Paulette Binot. I will also like to invite the Regional Director for Latin America of Water.org, Rocio Cavazos. And I would also like to invite Juan Roberto Vargas, News Director for Caracol News. He will be our moderator. And I would also like to thank Franz Rojas, Director of Analysis and Technical Evaluation for Water and Sanitation at CAF. Franz will introduce the topic and panel. Thank you, friends. Good afternoon to all of you. It is an honor for me to be here with these brief introductory remarks regarding such a fundamental issue as water, access, climate adaptation, infrastructure, and governance. Water means many things. We say that water is not a sector, it's a system that sustains the other sectors. And at CAF, we say that water is at the center of sustainable development. It's not one of the lesser issues because we see that access to water and sanitation is a human right, but we see that our region has many challenges. We have more than 140 million people who lack safe access to water, twice as many who have no safe access to sanitation. It's a region that's rich in hydric resources, but it's also very vulnerable. The aftermath of floods show us that in Latin America we have a flood every 10 days in Latin America and the Caribbean. Droughts are not as frequent, but they're more harmful. Our research shows that in the past 6 years, the yearly average due to drought has been more severe than that for the previous 20 years. The annual rainfall average or lack thereof. So we see that this is a critical element in our conversation on whether there's enough water. And at CAF, many years ago, we began a voluntary commitment to increase our contributions to water issues to
We're on the third year and we are 85% compliance with that goal. So we can do more and better. And that is a commitment we are working on for a new water security strategy for 2026-2030. And when we refer in this panel, that I'll yield now the floor to the moderator, obviously we talk about access because access is inclusion, social cohesion, it's also climate adaptation, and we need resilient communities and systems. We need infrastructures that are also resistant, but combining gray and green solutions, and we need a water governance that begins with governance of water and sanitation systems, but also trans-border governance. Not a minor case because in the region we have over 70 trans-border basins, 22 of the 33 countries in the region. So I'm very pleased with this panel we have. We have representatives, a high-level panel, and thank you to the moderator for accompanying us. With no further ado, I leave you so we can listen to them. Thank you and welcome. Good afternoon, and thank you for this invitation to CAF. Thank you, everyone. Well, although the presenter gave us an introduction with the names of the guests, I would very briefly, in a few minutes, like to mention the importance of these three women because they're an example of leadership, each one in their country. Just something private. I shared with them. Professor Vinod, I shared with her, well, obviously to present her, I was reading about her track record, her work, and now they're my idols because very few people in Latin America and in the world, but particularly in Latin America, in the midst of public order issues, poverty, and other difficulties, political polarization, as we've mentioned, very few people decide to convert the study of an issue such as water that is so vital as their reason for living. And I'll begin with Professor Paulette Milo. She's the president of the World Association for Water Caribbean. She's a Caribbean expert in environmental sciences and water resource management for over 4 decades. She's devoted herself to teach about environmental policies for the University of Guyana. Mariela Sanchez, she's executive director of Aquafondo in Peru for Lima and Callao. But beyond these two cities that are emblematic in a country we admire so much as Peru, she's devoted to seek for nature-based solutions, but not only on nature, but on human pockets to seek for resources, especially to manage common efforts, which is what we'll talk about. And Rocio Cavazos, Water Org Director in Mexico, she's devoted her life to planning, seeking, and promoting ways of taking access to drinking water and sanitation to millions of people to accessible means. And I think that's important for them. So the first question, I will begin with Rocio. The last person mentioned, it's the same question for the three. To talk about this important topic such as water. Water is the new gold. If we see it in terms of scarcity, lack of management, as we said with Mariela. As of the objectives Franz mentioned, and as this conversation is titled Climate Adaptation, Access, Infrastructure, and Governance, what systematic changes are indispensable so that Latin America and the Caribbean advance towards water security vis-a-vis 2030? I'll begin with you, Rocio. Well, thank you. Can you hear me? Excellent. Good afternoon, and thank you for accompanying us. And responding to your question, I would like to share that for Water.org, behind the water crisis, that is, behind this gap of access to safe water and sanitation, this is something global, not only for Latin America. Behind this water crisis, there is an investment crisis because figures are quite clear. It's been estimated that in order to get universal access to safe water and sanitation in the world, we need to invest 1.7 billion. That would be in English trillion, 1.7 trillion to have universal access. And this means that had we begun in 2016 to invest what was necessary each year, that would be around $114 billion per year. However, the investments have been closer to 29 billion per year. That's the figures we've researched, meaning that we should have quadrupled the investment globally. Now, in Latin America, there's estimates from IDB and other sources that point at the gap of investment is at least 12 billion per year. So when we see these figures, they speak about the need of participation, coordination, and collaboration of a diversity of sources. Of course, public investment, private investment, philanthropy, and catalytic capital can also play a very, very important role. And here, we can talk about a series of actors, government resources that can be non-reimbursable, and also development banking, multilateral agencies, commercial banking, investment fund, the philanthropic sector, and technical assistance that can play a crucial role in triggering investment. I will give you a very quick example of what we found in Mexico. For example, there are resources at the federal level available for water infrastructure projects. However, there are many municipalities that have an important part of the population that not even have running water. What happens here is, in spite of the resources, those that need it the most, the municipalities that are smaller with less resources, are precisely the ones that don't have the means to develop a large list of specialized studies that are required and a project with the rigor the authorities need to assess and register them in these programs to access to state and federal funds. So these funds that are non-reimbursable usually also require co-investment or matched funds. If they can't have access to these funds, the co-investment isn't triggered, and it's that inertia in the gap, in the lack of investment. So something very important we see as a need here is participation, a diversity of actors and of funding sources. In this case, also the crucial role that technical assistance can play. It can be in kind to conclude the necessary studies and put together a project with a required rigor that would trigger federal state investment, non-reimbursable, and also support in restructuring an investment as a debt that can be a model that can be replicated in many municipalities. Professor, what I was reading, and Rocio has reiterated it, and you've made many studies, this figure this year, 2030, is not a whim. That is, there is a goal for that water security. Same question for all of you. What systemic changes are indispensable to guarantee that there is advancement in water security in a region such as Latin America and the Caribbean?
Am I on?
Sí, se le escucha.
Thank you. Good afternoon to everyone.
Sí.
First, let me extend my gratitude to CAF and to the government of Panama for allowing me to participate in this very important session. I think that there is one fundamental truth that probably caused all of us to be gathered here today, and that is that water is essential for life. Whether we talk about human life or whether we talk about life within the context of ecological systems. But we have three main problems with water. The first has to do with quantity, because climate change has really wrapped attention to the fact that we can have too much with intense precipitation or too little because of droughts. And we've seen it in our experience with the ENSO phenomenon. Then we also have the issue of quality. Pollution pervades every country. I am glad that you're asking for systemic changes, because systemic changes allow us to look beyond the surface. You know, sometimes we are very artificial in the way we treat with problems. But when we think of systemic changes, we're thinking of changes that are radical, that are fundamental, changes that would go beyond just the incremental process. It's for long term. And so there are 5 areas that I want to draw to our attention where I consider systemic changes needed. The first has to do with the institutional reform. In too many of our countries in Latin America and the Caribbean, we're seeing the very fragmented approach to water management. In a particular country, you can have 10 different actors dealing with water. The right hand not knowing what the left hand is doing. And even within a particular institution, there is no vertical or horizontal collaboration. And that really affects the way we manage, because when we talk about managing a natural resource, we're really talking about how we manage our interactions with the resource. Many of the problems that face water resources are outside of the water sector. And so that alone would drive us to a sort of collaborative model in which there is institutional collaboration. And the model can be different depending on the context of the country. In Guyana, for example, we have the National Water Council that allows for many actors to be involved. And this can be at the centralized level as well as the decentralized level. So for example, you have the Water Users Association that consists of farmers and that can be represented in the decision making. The next area has to do with the way decisions are made. I think for a long time we are very much involved in a sort of top-down, centralized, bureaucratic way of decision making to manage water. It is time we consider a top-down approach that would also allow the ordinary person who is also a user of water, the women who interact with water every day, the young people whose the future is at stake. So it's not only for them to be recipients of a particular decision that is made at a higher level, but for them to be participants in the process. Next, we need a fundamental shift in how we monitor and enforce rules. Monitoring, I know, could be affected by capacity, but we really need to see that as being very important because many persons interact with water in a way that threatens the water even further apart from climate change. The other fundamental shift in what we do would be how we make policies. Policies must be tied and must be driven by the science. So data-driven informed policies, very important. And so maybe it's a cultural shift. You don't wake up one morning and decide this is what I'm going to do in the water sector, but it must be based on hard data. For example, if we're talking about managing and allocation of water, do we know how much water we have? Has there been any inventory taken? And so this is very important. There is also the flawed perception in some countries, water, yes, it's a human right, but this flawed perception that maybe water is very plentiful, and so we can waste it. And you have a lot of wastage in water. So we really need to see education, awareness, sensitivity as a critical intervention to make that fundamental shift. And my last point has to do with how we treat with water resources. So if we're talking about water management, I think we have to link it with other critical issues that face us in the world. Latin America and the Caribbean not being peculiar to the problem. That is biodiversity protection, and also for us to be able to tackle the issue of desertification, because we know that vegetation plays a very important role in the hydrological cycle. So that when we are talking about decision making, just to reiterate what my colleague said, the collaborative approach is very important. Water is essential for life. We know what the climate models are saying to us, and really no action is not an option. So we really need to make those fundamental shifts. Thank you.
Sí, señora. Gracias, profesora. Y ahí viene
Professor, and there, Mariela, we've already talked about funds, resources, realities, and unachieved goals. Professor Reno spoke about institutional issues and legal management, reforms. The legs of the table, which leg is missing for management? Something you fight for. Water stress. Water stress. Yes, thank you. Well, first of all, Sacofondo, very briefly, Aquafondo is Fondo del Agua de Lima. And these are civil society organizations, water funds. We're a platform for articulating amongst diverse circles, the state, the private sector. And I was commenting, Juan Roberto, in the introduction, that I have been very pleased these 2 days we have been listening to different lectures. Please, meaning because it's a topic I feel passionate about. It's like everything coincides with water. We talk about freedom, peace, commitment, and all of that leads us back to water. And one of the systemic changes I've been hearing about these days is to be able to have a shared agenda. How in Latin America we need to propose ourselves to work together in many things, in many spaces. We've been talking about having a single voice to be stronger. And we need to reach agreements. Why? And this is a topic you asked before about what's missing. It's to have an outlook for a comprehensive basin management because our rivers don't know anything about borders. Our rivers just flow. So if there is a river in Ecuador, the rivers that are in Colombia, they are related to the water we received in Peru. So we need to reach agreements. We need to share an outlook that's far broader of what a basin means because basins go far beyond just river water. They have to do with a whole ecosystem and all the life that develops itself around it. And that life includes biodiversity, and that life also includes people. And as the professor said, this is translated into communities, in women, with whom we have to talk, with youth, with whom we need to reach agreements. They should be part of. In Aquafondo, we've also received this concern, and it has to do with resource mobilization, because it is important to acknowledge that the state and each country has to invest in water, in basin management. So it is important that collaborations should continue strengthening technical capacity, especially in the role of government servants that is so important in Latin America. It's also important to tell the private sector, you need to do something. And we have developed studies with which we've been able to go and knock on their doors and their pockets as well and tell them, if you're not doing anything, you will have an economic loss. This is proof of it. If you don't take action for the sake of water, you will suffer your consequences in your bottom line, in your profit. We've forgotten about that resource, which is the most important asset for everyone, and we've invisibilized it. And this invisibilization has to do with the fact that water, for many of us, is the water when we just open the water faucet. But water is here, it's here, it's here. It's absolutely everywhere, in everything that surrounds us. So we need to have a serious concern, and it should be pre-occupation. What to do? How can we have a more solidary outlook with all the actors of water? Who are all the actors of water in a basin? Those who live in the higher part of the basin and in the lower part as well. In the same study France quoted during the introduction, it states that over 80% of water is for urban zones, urban consumers, and the remaining one is for rural populations. And that water has a great use in agriculture. Yes, but the agriculture, of course, is the one that provides us the agricultural supplies for a big part of the industry. So we need to look into that. In Alcafondo, well, we have a project, like you mentioned, for nature-based solutions and the recovery of ancestral systems for water capturing. That is, we call it harvesting water, and we can capture rainwater, infiltrate into the aquifer, and increase the reserves of water. But if we have more water in the populations in the upper part of the basin, we have to care for it. But we have to give the population tools. That's what we're working on. We're harvesting water when we recharge the aquifers, but also dignified river systems. And with that, we do an efficient water use. What the doctor said, and going back to that, we need to quantify the benefit of all the projects we undertake. If we tell the private, public sector, cooperating agencies, invest in us, we can also tell them why. Not only water is important. Now we have monitoring systems, water monitoring systems, to know how many cubic meters per dollar can we infiltrate into the aquifers. So that makes investment attractive. Those that invest with us in a technified irrigation system, we can tell them how much was spent before and how much is spending now. Everything is translated into cubic meters, so the investment is sustainable. And we also involve communities in all this process because they are our main actors. Rocio initially spoke about what Mariela said, how to make it attractive. It sounds awful to say, but how can caring for water resources be something attractive? But you and Water Org do something that I'm especially struck about, and it's a specific question for each of one of you to share these experiences. It's water credits. That system, how can we scale it? How can we really make it become a general plan, not only in your country, but throughout Latin America and the Caribbean? Thank you for the question. And our organization, Water Org, has existed for over 30 years. It began with direct interventions in communities, like building a well, for instance. But 2 decades ago, it gave an important change with the water credits. It's a technical assistance program for financial institutions, specifically credit institutions, to accompany them in developing credit products that are destined for water and sanitation so that people, families can finance their own solutions of water and sanitation in their households. What we do is precisely a big collaboration with these financial institutions because they have their own branches, their own channels, their credit advisors, their client base, and their means of communication and marketing. And we use that because we work with microcredits that cater for the base of pyramid, which the major need is. And in a relatively short period of time, we can reach out to many people. Currently, with this model, we've reached 88 million people around the world, of which over 8 million are in Latin America, which is the region that entered the organization most recently. It's also in Asia and Africa. And something very important to comment regarding this figure of impact of these 88 million people, although the organization has existed for over 30 years, more than half of them have been reached in the past 5 years. That speaks of how we've scaled up and accelerated the impact. Our co-founder, Matt Damon, likes of something. He always mentions it. He comments, he says, how long had it taken us to reach 80 million people, let's say, with the direct intervention model in communities? How long? It would have taken us 600 years. That speaks of the value precisely of collaboration, will, synergies, joining forces. So here we do it with institutions, with financial institutions, that is, and we can mention other partnerships. For example, thinking about financing these entities, which is Water Equity, which is an asset manager, to bring resources to these funds, but we also have blue bonds in Peru. And there, COFIDE, a big thank to them, a great partner in Peru, with 2 funds that have been disbursed, 100 and 120 million soles for activities in Peru. So these are examples. Marvelous. And we continue growing. We're now with a water credit model for SMEs. So we're working, accompanying credit institutions to develop products for water and sanitation for companies in the water chain that are making it possible to breach these gaps. So we continue with other initiatives now, working from infrastructure as well, because we acknowledge the fact that we can cover many needs, but there are many contexts where we need to approach infrastructure, and there are many other things to do. Many more things. Very interesting, the work you do. Professor Vino, island states face common challenges, especially in planning, financing, data, that is data management. What regional cooperation methodologies do you think can accelerate access, universal access of what we've been talking about, to water sources, and most importantly, to strengthen those communities and those water sources to huge challenges such as climate change, especially in basins and aquifers that are shared? Professor Reno.
Thank you for Well, I think it was Schumacher who said small is beautiful. But you and I know that apart from being beautiful, small can be problematic. And if you doubt me, you just need to go back to the Barbados Plan of Action in 1994. You would recall that when there was the Rio Summit in 1992, the small island states thought that their issues were not really ventilated, and so they needed their own meeting, and that meeting was held by the UN. I'm saying that to underscore the peculiar problems faced by island states. And we know size would be one. We also know that island states are very, particularly in the context of the Caribbean, in climate change negotiations, we've always said that the Caribbean region is one of the most vulnerable to climate change. And so adaptation is very critical. But we have problems with capacities. In the first segment, I would have raised a number of issues that require systemic changes. And so now I think that because we're talking about island states with the different limitations, a collaborative approach is required. First, we can talk about collaborative monitoring and having maybe a sort of Caribbean observatory. Because if you do not monitor the water resources, you really don't know what is happening, whether you talk about quantity or whether you're talking about quality. In many countries, you might have a sort of what I call reactive response to a particular resource, and we need to change that fundamentally and to really embrace a more precautionary approach. And the precautionary approach requires that we monitor and that we share the data. So the open access data in some central repository would be key. There is a problem of capacities, and so there can be a regional hub that will provide training not only for technical officers, but because every human being interacts with water, the training can be targeted to different social groups. So you can have members of the community also participating because they're really the foot soldiers at the local level. And, funding is a big issue. But again, a number of countries can come together and present a proposal for the Green Climate Fund that would really help them to improve the infrastructure. We know that non-revenue water, for example, is a big issue because it calls for financial capital to be able to maintain the infrastructure. So it has to be a comprehensive approach, data sharing, looking at capacities, monitoring together, and also perhaps looking at the risk insurance. How can you have a more regional approach? And I know that in the Caribbean, there is this, the CRIF that has really been working well. So these things really, these interventions can be scaled up and they can be replicated because I don't think that context really matters in this because we're talking about island states that really share the same issues.
Y hablando de esos modelos replicables, de los que
And speaking about replicable models that Professor Vino mentioned, Mariela, there's a key issue. We're talking a lot about water funds as a tool for protecting ecosystems. What is required for scaling? Like Rocio said, there are public, private actors involved. What you said to management, how can these water funds, what mechanisms are required to scale up in a region where, I repeat, I don't understand how this region is so rich in water and it faces so many water issues. Well, the first thing, like the doctor mentioned, that's missing is to be able to work in numbers and in monitoring. We need to demonstrate in Latin America water funds that this is a model that is truly functional. We in Peru have made great strides. We have data with which we motivate investment, we motivate co-investment as well, because now we are inviting the private sector to co-invest with international cooperation. So we're adding actors for the same projects. And also something that is very important to scale up, at least that's what we see directly in Peru, is to have the capacity to look around at other people that precisely still don't have water. Because, in fact, right now, there are many of our colleagues in Latin America that are sharing a message. They say, we don't have that problem in my country. In my country, we do have water. Well, we have lots of water in mine as well. So what about your country? Does the whole population have water? Then a second of silence, and their answer is no. And it's valid. The question is valid. How, being countries with so much water, the 100% of a population does not have access to water, and there are different issues here. One of them is territorial planning. In Peru, many populations in Lima have settlements where there's no water, and they will not be able to have water because they've invaded in these settlements on lands that are private property, or where the slope is so steep that it's too expensive in terms of infrastructure. But it has to be calculated, the cost, because these are the populations that are paying the most for water. In Peru, those that have running water in their homes 7 days or 24/7, we pay between, in dollars, more or less around $20, $25. And people that don't have water to fill their tanks and their cisterns, $12 a week. $12 a week, with all the risk that entails for their health, because they're filling tanks that doesn't have the quality of water for human consumption throughout the week. So we also need to look at these people and I'm talking about urban zones, but in the rural zones, it's still even more complex. We still have companies that when they begin to invest, they say, well, if I give X amount and the community gives the labor, contributes with labor, you think that labor could be free? Because at the end of the day, they will be benefited. And the answer is these projects that are executed will upstream will benefit those that are downstream. So it's our obligation to pay for them, these projects that are carried out jointly. And something else, to be a party, like the professor said in her intervention, to be a clear and direct part of the process, make them part of the process. What do I mean? We've developed an intervention model. What is an intervention model? We don't execute projects which we think will work. We execute projects which it occurs to us that can give us more cubic meters. All the projects we begin to execute are projects we have identified with each of the communities. We hold workshops, we do mapping processes with the communities, because we understand that if we execute these projects that communities are prioritizing, communities take ownership of them, and that's the only way in which we will be able to guarantee sustainability of these projects. So after we have identified these projects with the communities, then we go out to look for investment, and this is very interesting. And we feel very proud of this, because when private companies and cooperation itself want to invest, the question is, where can we invest in water? So we have a catalog. It's a portfolio of interventions we've prepared with the community. And the answer in these projects and in these communities is, it's a very big company that extracted water from a spring in one of the communities, and it was convenient to intervene in a given community but it was not in the portfolio, the project they wanted. And that company finally accepted what the community had decided. So these are ways to guarantee a local governance and to work in a shared fashion, because when organizations
Because a territory has to be kept in the best conditions, because we have to try to improve the quality of life of the populations that we execute problems with. We cannot agree on a project that will benefit all urban areas. Well, we have been told that our time is up, and I had about 8 more questions, but we'd be here until tomorrow talking about this topic, a topic which generates in you, and I repeat, you are admirable because you are the people who carry out the work in your country. Thank you very much. We would like to invite you to stay with us because, in addition to the official picture, for those who are here in this room with us, we will continue with the activities because right now we will ask you to return to the plenary room where shortly the final panels of the day will begin. So if we could please ask you to join us in the plenary session, we are going to talk about two relevant topics. So I will ask you to please move from the green room to the plenary room in order to listen to the presentations that will begin shortly. And please, we'd like to remind you that this forum is available on social media platforms X, Instagram, and Facebook. And we ask you, if you'd like to continue the conversation, to participate using the hashtag Foro Económico CAF. Thank you very much, and we invite you to join us in the plenary session.